So this is language exactly from the syllabus. Throughout the course, students will have the opportunity to revise projects 1 and 2. You can do both if you want to, or you can just do project 1 or just project 2 for an improved grade as long as you met the minimum project requirements when the project was actually due. For time constraint reasons, obviously project 3 can't be revised after the due date because it's due on the last day of class. But in order to be considered, all of the revised projects must be submitted by the last day of class, the 11th, to Blackboard and be accompanied by a paragraph describing any changes that you made to the project. So that's important. You have to include that reflective component. And also important is that submitting a revised version of the product does not guarantee an improved grade. It's for an opportunity for an improved grade. In order to improve your grade, you have to have made substantial and global revisions. In other words, I want you to engage with the feedback that you got the first time around, develop your ideas, organize your content more effectively, not just fixing grammar or typos. And the little caveat there, meet the minimum project requirements really means if you missed a draft the first time around or if you turned in the paper 3 days late initially, you're not eligible to take advantage of the revision clause because you didn't meet the minimum project requirements the first time around when it was due. Like I said, some of you have already talked to me about revision. If we've had a conversation about revision, then go ahead and move forward with the plans that we have made. And if you hadn't thought about revision at all yet, keep in mind this clause. If you take advantage of it, it will be due on the 11th by end of day. And you can just turn those in to the same Dropbox where you submitted them the first time. It'll show up for me as a new attempt. I'll be able to see it. I'll be able to see it right next to your previous attempt. And I can just overwrite the previous grade right there in the grade book. So moving on to Project 3. As you know by now, Project 3 has 2 main components. You've got the genre creations, 3 of them, and an accompanying rationale for each genre that you make. This means that you're going to be evaluated both on your application of your genre knowledge in creating 3 unique texts, but also on your ability to discuss your composing choices intelligently. So on both ends, you're really using our course concepts. You're going to use them in application and implementation to create genres that meet the conventions of that kind of writing and that are rhetorically effective. And then you're going to use our course concepts also to analyze your own work and say, this is why my text is rhetorically effective, based on the kind of genre that it is, based on the purpose that my campaign has, and based on the audience that I'm writing for. A major difference between this project and the previous is that instead of everyone writing a research paper or everyone writing a rhetorical analysis paper, you are all creating very different kinds of texts. Some of you are creating the same genre, like a couple of people are doing a flyer, a couple of people are doing an infographic. But for the most part, you're all creating very different kinds of text. And so because of that, our grading system has to be more flexible than it was in previous projects. So the previous rubrics that we've had have been focused on content, form, process, and conventions. The main categories I'm going to be considering here are these 4 that I've outlined for you. You'll be able to see some overlap between the previous rubrics and this one. It's just that we're being a little bit more flexible to account for the very different kinds of writing that you're doing in this project from one student to the next. So the first thing that I'll be looking at when I grade these projects is how appropriate each genre choice is, given the purpose and audience for your campaign. So this is really right off the bat. What kinds of text did you choose to create? And do they really fit with the message that you're trying to communicate and the audience that you're trying to communicate it to? The second thing I'll be looking at is how well each genre creation meets the conventions of that genre. The third is how thoughtfully you've considered your own rhetorical choices and can analyze and reflect on your compositions and your rationales. And the fourth is how much evidence of thoughtfulness, precision, and care is apparent in the final draft of each composition. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about each of those 4 categories. So appropriate genres. My sort of example question there is, would you use Snapchat to talk to baby boomers about healthcare? No, probably not. The second is, who uses PowerPoint outside of school? A couple of people indicated or suggested PowerPoint presentations in their proposals, and I think everyone that proposed that, I responded with the same question. Does this genre get much use outside of the classroom or the boardroom? And since most of you are looking at context and purposes and audiences for your campaign that are not in a classroom setting or not in a boardroom setting, PowerPoint's not really a genre that has a whole lot of currency outside of those two settings. So it's probably not an appropriate genre for most of your campaigns. Think about it. PowerPoint needs an audience to be live, to be right there. You can sort of obviously appropriate PowerPoint to use in distributed settings like I'm using it for right now, but it's still a classroom setting. And classroom and boardroom are really the only two places where you see PowerPoint used. So it's not necessarily a genre that has a lot of momentum outside of very limited context. And the first question, would you use Snapchat to touch baby boomers? Probably not. It's not appropriate for the audience. Most baby boomers, they might have cell phones, they might have Facebook, they might have Twitter, but they're probably not going to have an app like Snapchat. And it's just not the kind of purpose that you would normally use Snapchat to talk about something like healthcare. So each of your genres needs to make sense for your campaign. It needs to make sense for the audience that you're trying to reach and for the message you're trying to deliver. And those are really the two things that it has to make sense for. As opposed to being chosen on convenience or, you know, I know how to make this because I've made it before. It really needs to be tied to relevance to your campaign. And so that's one of the first things that I'm going to be looking at is, does this genre make sense? Your rhetorical rationale is an opportunity for you to talk about why you chose to compose in each genre, so you want to make sure that you are making your case for each of those choices in that accompanying document. Because I may originally think, I don't really think this is an appropriate genre, but if you make a strong case for it in your rationale, you can change my mind. So that's your first grading category. Your second is genre conventions, and that's really the focus of your peer review this week. My example up at the top is that social media is social. It only works if you build a network. You build a network through following other accounts, using hashtags, retweeting, reblogging, regramming other people. It only works if you engage in a sort of social activity. So if you are creating some kind of social media platform like a Twitter feed or an Instagram page, you need to conform to those conventions and expectations of that social participation in the genre. So overall, no matter what you're creating, they should be as real as possible, meaning that they must meet the audience's expectations for that kind of text. Remember, all genres have agreed upon rules. So I'm going to just really quickly move away from the PowerPoint and look at an example of a student Twitter feed. This is from a class that I taught last semester. And we can see how this student applied those different conventions of the genre. So the purpose of this campaign was to encourage people to adopt a vegan lifestyle. That was the research project, was on vegans and how vegans make different arguments about encouraging people to stop eating meat and animal byproducts. And so for the campaign, this student created a Twitter feed. She also created this poster, which I can sort of zoom in on, applying some of the same shock value tactics that she analyzed in a research paper that a lot of PETA and other pro-vegan organizations use in their advertisements. So she used that as her profile picture for the Twitter campaign, which was really effective because it allowed two of her genres to really be completely integrated. So we have the poster and the Twitter feed right here. And then you can see there's an appropriate Twitter handle. She has let any visitors to the page know that this is a campaign page for ENC 2135. Feel free to do that as well. You can see that she's followed some other accounts. She's actually gained some followers. I'm not going to grade you on how many followers that you have. But you can also see there's a substantial amount of tweets here. And that there is use of hashtags, right? This is a convention that we would expect from Twitter. We would expect a Twitter page to have a profile picture, have a background picture. We would expect a little bit of a description here. We would expect multiple tweets. We would expect someone who's on Twitter to follow other Twitter users. We would expect some links to other web content, some inclusion of images, use of appropriate hashtags, short messages that are to the point, some retweets of other relevant accounts. These are all things that this person did quite well in terms of meeting the expectations of the genre of Twitter. This is the kind of thing that you see on a real Twitter account. So when it comes to looking at conventions, these are the kinds of things that I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be thinking, okay, what are the features of this genre? What do we normally expect from it? What are the agreed upon rules for this kind of composition? And how far have you gone to meet all of those elements and expectations? So that's what I've asked you to consider in your peer review this week. So hopefully that shines a little bit more light on what it is I'm asking you to look for. And the Bedford book, pages 12 to 15, all the way back in that first chapter, kind of break down what we mean by conventions. So if you need a refresher on that, go back to those pages. But basically we're looking at elements, features of the genre. So a feature of Twitter would be hashtags, as well as style and design expectations. So those are the things that you'll really want to keep in mind for each of your compositions. So that's your second grading category. Your third are how well you've analyzed your own work and reflected on it in your rationale. So this is an opportunity for you to sort of speak up for your text, why you made the choices you did. And it's also an opportunity for you to let me know a little bit about any problems that you ran into or things that you really wanted to do but didn't work out as well as you anticipated. These kinds of things will influence my reading of the compositions themselves. So the rationale really is a very important component of this project. So for each genre you create, you also have the opportunity to tell me a bit about your composing process, the reason why you chose the genre you did, and why your text is successful according to the conventions of the genre and according to the text's role in your overall campaign. Again, I can't stress enough how much the rationale can really sort of make or break your project, because if I'm reading one of your compositions one way and I'm thinking that it's not entirely successful, it doesn't meet the conventions that I would normally think of in the genre, or I don't see how it really fits in with the other two creations that you've made in your campaign, but then your rationale really explains the logic behind your choices, I can read that text in an entirely new way. So your rationale is an opportunity for you to help me understand things about your compositions that I may not be able to see on my own. It can really change my view of a genre composition by allowing me to see what you're trying to do and why. So even if something didn't come out entirely successfully, it's an opportunity for you to talk to me about the logic at work in all of your compositions. So that's 3 of 4. And the last is care, precision, and thoughtfulness. I want you to take pride in your work. This is a very different kind of project, and for some people it's much more challenging, and for others it seems deceptively easy. And so I want you to go into this with sort of a little bit of understanding of the gravity of this project. I hope it's an opportunity for you to be creative and to be imaginative. I do think that it is a sort of more fun way to end the semester for a lot of people, because you get to have a little bit more freedom in your design choices and in the kinds of text that you're creating. You're not writing another paper. It is also, though, an opportunity for you to apply a lot of the genre knowledge that we've been building over the course of the semester in some texts that are new. So you've been analyzing how a lot of texts use genre from project 1 all the way to now, and now it's your turn to actually apply that knowledge to creating your own work. But what I'm looking for in these final compositions is evidence of detailed planning and careful execution. I have seen collages that were just sort of slapped together. I have seen Twitter feeds that are just sort of bare bones skeletons. They don't even have a profile picture. Other kinds of just half-hearted attempts that really do bring down the entire project, because they just they don't show evidence of detailed planning and of careful execution. This is different, though, than having a learning curve if you're attempting to learn something like Photoshop or iMovie and you've never used it before. I don't expect you to be a professional video editor when you're submitting something like a video. I don't expect that at all. What I do expect, though, is that if you are attempting to teach yourself a new program, or if you're learning a new program by going to a space like the Digital Studio, which I absolutely recommend, if you're learning to use programs for the first time, I understand that it can be difficult to make them do the thing that you want them to do. That's fine. In fact, that's something that you should talk about in your rationale. But this project should challenge you. It shouldn't be an opportunity to just sort of coast into the end of the semester. And having a learning curve using a program like Photoshop or using a program like GarageBand or iMovie is different than just sort of slapping something together or hastily assembling something. So again, use the rationale to your advantage. Use the rationale to give you some sort of narrative and background on how you went about making these different creations, and if any issues that you ran into came up, you can talk to me about them there. It's an opportunity for you to talk about limitations, but it's also an opportunity for you to show me what was working. So again, these two parts of the project really do work off from each other, and they really should be very closely intertwined so that I can have a very thorough and complete reading of your overall project and understand it in the way that you do. So those are the main points that I wanted to lay out for you in terms of how I will be evaluating Project 3. Obviously, I'll be getting that feedback to you once the class period is over. I'll be doing the grading over the course of the week and a half after you turn that work in. But I did want to sort of break that down so that you know exactly how I'm going to be reading this and how you can give me the most positive rating possible.